Welcome to the deep dive. Ever walked away from a chat feeling just completely wiped out?
Yeah, like you've been carrying something heavy that wasn't yours to begin with.
Exactly. Or, wondered why some talks feel really connecting and others just drain you.
Hmm.
So today we're getting into something really important, looking at relational trauma, specifically through the ideas of emotional sharing versus emotional dumping.
Right.
Our mission, really, is to unpack the differences. They can be subtle, but they're profound. We're drawing on work by psychotherapist Juha Klaavu.
Yeah, we've got some great excerpts from him.
These should really shed some light.
And it's so crucial, this distinction. I mean, it's not just about figuring out other people.
No.
It's about understanding our own stuff, our patterns and relationships. It really helps build healthier connections and, helps you understand yourself better.
Definitely. Recognizing it can genuinely change things.
It really can.
Okay, so let's dive into the main issue. Why is it so hard sometimes for people to tell the difference between, genuine sharing that builds closeness
Hmm.
and just being used as an emotional dumping ground?
Yeah, it gets blurry.
And our source material really stresses that seeing this difference clearly is, it's essential if you want to address relational trauma.
Absolutely essential.
Klaavu himself points out, describing these emotional states in writing is tough. They're sort of best explored live, in conversation.
That makes sense. They're felt experiences.
Hmm.
So let's talk about sharing first. Klaavu uses the Finnish jakaminen, or the French partager.
Right.
And both those words kind of imply giving a part,
Yeah.
sharing a piece of the load, not the whole crushing weight.
Okay.
The real key, he says, is that the person sharing is still fundamentally carrying their own feelings inside themselves, in their own psyche.
So they're not overwhelmed by it.
Exactly. It's not something so unbearable that they couldn't handle it alone if they had to. When you share properly, you still hold onto the emotional load, its power. You're just describing what's inside.
You're letting someone see it, not making them carry it.
Precisely.
Ah.
You're not trying to offload this unbearable thing. And crucially, in real sharing, you see the other person as a subject,
A subject, meaning.
meaning a separate person with their own feelings, their own experience, not just an object there for your needs. It's about a real interaction between two distinct people.
Okay. That idea of seeing the other as a subject, that really clarifies the opposite.
It does, doesn't it?
Because when that respect for their separateness is right there, that's when we get into what Klaavu calls emotional dumping.
Kataminen in Finnish, déverser in French, like literally pouring out or spilling over.
Yeah, pouring it onto someone else. It happens when someone just can't carry their own stuff, their emotions, anxiety, discomfort.
They look for somewhere to dump it.
Exactly. And the sources are really clear here, quite stark, actually. They call it a form of psychological violence.
Or emotional abuse. It's strong language, but appropriate.
It is, because the person doing the dumping, they see the other person basically as an object, just there to meet their needs, soak up their feelings.
So the complete opposite of sharing.
Totally. Emotional dumping doesn't acknowledge the other person's separateness. Klaavu calls it their true self.
That authentic core.
Right.
Yeah.
It just bypasses it, invalidates it, rejects it, treats them like a tool, basically, a functional object.
And think about the long-term effects, especially, and this is tragic, when it happens in childhood.
Oh, boy.
If parents are constantly dumping their emotions onto a child, that just becomes normal. For that child, it's their reality.
So they internalize it.
Deeply.
Oh.
Unconsciously, they come to believe that this is their place, their role in the world, to absorb other people's difficult feelings.
And then they carry that into adulthood.
Often, yes. They unconsciously recreate that dynamic in friendships, romantic relationships, even at work sometimes.
Wow.
And the really sad part is they often don't even understand the difference between healthy sharing and this dumping. They don't see it as exploitation or rejection. It just feels familiar.
That's incredibly powerful. It makes you think about patterns, doesn't it? Things you might see around you or even in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say dumping is emotional rejection and abandonment, it's because that person isn't being met as a subject. Their real self is just ignored,
A past.
invalidated.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting or maybe concerning. When someone unconsciously seeks out similar relationships later,
The ones that mirror childhood.
right, it actually reinforces that unconscious identity. Can you maybe say a bit more on how that makes them feel like they're only valuable as a tool?
Sure. Because their early experience taught them on this really deep unconscious level that their value comes from being that container.
From absorbing the difficult stuff. Exactly. From being a functional object for someone else's emotional needs. So they kind of lose touch with their own inherent worth, just as a separate human being.
That makes sense.
And this whole dynamic, starting in childhood, feeds directly into what we call relational trauma.
Okay.
It leads to this pervasive, unconscious sense of, well, worthlessness, shame, even guilt. Because they're constantly trying to find value in this role that actually devalues them.
That's a heavy burden.
It is. Now, there is an important exception we should mention.
Okay.
In therapy, especially early on, a therapist can act as a sort of container for the client's really intense, maybe unbearable emotions.
But that's different.
Completely different. It's a professional, ethical context. It's contained, and crucially, it's something that's openly discussed and agreed upon. It's part of the therapeutic process, not the harmful unconscious dumping we've been talking about.
Right, that's a vital distinction. So let's zoom out a bit. What does all this tell us about the link between our thoughts, our intellect, and our emotions?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's maybe surprising, but for a lot of people, the line between a thought and an actual feeling isn't always crystal clear.
No, it can be fuzzy.
But a key insight here is that emotions kind of have their own logic, their own place. They don't just change because we wish they would.
You can't just think your way out of feeling something.
Right. You can't just decide, okay, stopping feeling sad now.
Doesn't work like that. And this brings up, how we try to deal with uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
The sources are really clear that just trying to repress them, pushing them down into the unconscious, hoping they'll disappear.
Like refouling them, as the text mentions.
Exactly. That's actually really damaging. It kind of suffocates you from the inside, causes suffering. It doesn't work.
Because they don't actually vanish.
No, emotions don't just disappear, but they do transform. Wounds, pains, they can be processed, they can heal within our psyche, like a physical wound healing, but emotionally.
And how does that happen?
Well, the sources emphasize it happens best within safe, empathetic relationships. Contexts where you feel seen and understood.
Connection again.
Connection is key. Of course, life itself, just living, helps us develop the capacity to handle things better over time, too. But that safe relational space is often crucial for deep healing.
Okay, so it really brings everything together. We started with that feeling of being drained after a conversation. And we've seen how it connects to these deep patterns, affecting our sense of self, potentially stemming from childhood. This dive into sharing versus dumping.
It's critical stuff.
Yeah, understanding this difference, it really feels like a shortcut to getting, well-informed about how relationships work, or sometimes why they don't.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave people with.
Okay.
If we accept this idea that emotions don't just disappear, they need to transform, and that this happens best in safe, empathetic contexts,
Right.
then what responsibility does that put on each of us, to actively seek out or create those kinds of healing relationships, rather than just falling back on the easier, maybe quicker, but ultimately harmful release of emotional dumping?
Wow. That's a powerful question to sit with. What is our responsibility in fostering that kind of connection?
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope exploring these ideas gives you something valuable to think about in your own life and relationships.